So, hi everyone. I'm here with Ant Ackers today. He's the expedition leader, but also a business leader as part of Mountain Boardroom. And Ant, we kind of met each other on a hike that we did recently with Digital DRA. You took us up a mountain in the Lake District, and we had a great day. So that's really how we got contacted. Maybe just explain a little about kind of what you do.
Yeah, Joe, as Mountain Boardroom, and we're all about taking businesses outside. That's kind of one-to-one business coaching with smaller businesses, with micro businesses, solopreneurs, that sort of thing. But then for larger companies, I tend to do more group sessions. That's taking leadership teams and business leaders outside into the outdoors to do some big strategic thinking, which you don't always get the time to do in the office. And it helps people to sort of like break out the patterns. The workplaces we currently work in, the spare rooms, the offices, they're all designed to be productive. They're designed to be places where we want to try and do. I try and take people into somewhere which is a bit different, where we actually do the thinking about the business. You can't solve problems in the same place where they come up. So I'm about taking people out of that place where they do tactical thinking, doing them in the mountain where we do some big thinking.
We had a great time, and I have to say, just a personal thank you for helping me get down the mountain at the end of it. I think I was probably the weakest of the groups, like hanging around the back, struggling with my knees a little bit. But you were fantastic in terms of just making sure that we all did it and we all got through it. I mean, for me, that was a pretty tough hike. I mean, we had a really roasting day as well, wasn't it? So it was.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, number one, I suppose, and I suppose just to find out, I suppose, what your typical experience is around sort of taking people who do have that sedentary life, I suppose. And we're all, as you say, we're all sort of sitting here on video calls and getting them out and sort of into the wild and sort of like seeing things. I mean, what's the typical reaction you typically come across?
Honestly, Chris, the reaction I normally get is one of curiosity. So
Mm,
people are like, wow, that's amazing. I'd love to do that. The reality is that that doesn't always translate to people actually coming out. What I find is people think it's a great idea. People want to get outside. They kind of see the value in it straight away. It's kind of a natural draw we have to that sort of environment. The issue I find is that the people who I don't work with, I guess more, it's very hard for us to give ourselves permission to actually take time and space to work on ourselves and our businesses. So actually getting people out of the office is very difficult. I think once people are there, everything clicks. We do some big thinking, some big visioning, but actually giving ourselves permission to break away from our to-do lists, our routines, it's quite difficult to do. I find it as well, So yeah, that's been my experience really.
And what's your kind of view? I mean, having sort of talked with lots of clients, but also from your experience before, because you were in the consulting business before. I
Mhm.
mean, do you think we're becoming more insular? I mean, it does feel like we've got more going on. Our to-do lists are getting heavier. It's almost like the treadmill's running fast to a certain extent instead of trying to get things done. It's almost like that breaking away of sort of saying, well, actually, I know I've got a long to-do list, but actually I need to take a bit of a break to sort of come up with fresh ideas. I mean, do you think it's getting worse?
I do. I think the pace of life's got a lot faster, especially over the last sort of 50 years or so. I think that's a good thing, we're becoming more efficient, productive. Question, jury's out on that one, but we're trying to fit more and more stuff into smaller and smaller spaces. And I think that's squeezing out some of the benefits we sometimes get from slower thinking. I'm not sure if you come across as Daniel Kahneman, thinking fast and slow. I think modern life is definitely geared up towards more and more quick thinking, more and more making quick decisions, lots of choice, being more productive. I think we may have lost something from that slow thing, that time it takes to reflect and ponder on things. I definitely see that that's one of the things that's missing in life. And you talk about isolation there and becoming more insular. I think that's another issue we've come across very, very recently. I think as we're starting to move from spaces which are more collaborative, in terms of like actually in person, in real life, into our spare rooms, into our kitchen tables on our own. I think it's becoming a bit of a problem. We are a social species. We evolved as species that sort of like walk together on the plains. That's where we did our big thinking. That's where we connected with people. That's where we learned to know, like, and trust each other. And we're kind of trying to replicate that now in a very, very online world where it's all about speed, about volume of interactions rather than the quality that comes behind it.
Mm. I mean, it does feel like everything's become very transactional. So it's almost like I'm going to do this for you, or we need to get this done, and it's very sort of like piecemeal and transactional, isn't it? And one of the things that kind of I wouldn't say surprised me, but was a great thing on the walk was just that social piece, and I suppose the coming together through a little bit through adversity to a certain extent, and sort of like just that networking, building a group, which is something we always used to do on team building, but feels like it's been lost, particularly through COVID to a certain extent.
Mhm.
So I think that camaraderie was a great benefit. I mean, do you see that elsewhere whenever you take groups out?
Yeah, it's a shared experience, really. I think there are two parts to it. I think the first part is around connection and how we as humans connect. Again, we seem to be in an environment where we're trying to make an impression very quickly. And we don't build trust that way. We build trust over time. And I think that's what we saw on the walk. We put ourselves in an environment where we were spending a lot of time with the same people. When you go to a traditional networking event, you might have 5-10 minutes talking to someone. That's not building a relationship. That's starting a relationship. Whereas when we went out for a full day, that was a chance to get a real establishment of a friendship as well. And I don't use that word lightly. I think friendships are what you do build. And I think that is important when you're in business. It's not about creating transactional colleagues. It's about creating real connections with real people. I think the second point that is that it's that shared experience. It does build a bond between people as well. So taking on something like we took when we went to Try the Engage, it's something that we share together. And you come across the concept of like type 2 fun versus type 1 fun. It's the fun you have in the moment. So if you're doing something and you think, oh, that's incredible, I'm really enjoying this, and you feel joy in the moment. Type 2 fun is something which seems arduous at the time, difficult. And it's only when you've had a chance to reflect and look back, you go, that was actually a really incredible experience. I'd say for you, Chris, I suspect most of the day was probably type 2 fun.
I'd say it probably was. When you saw the picture of me sort of clinging onto the grass on the edge of Striding Edge, sort of like trying not to fall off, or being worried about falling off, and I think I was pretty safe to be honest, but it was all in my mind. That was definitely type 2 fun. But I enjoyed it now, right? So it's fantastic.
And I think going through that shared experience together with somebody else, it builds a bond between you. And it on the type of hike we were on, where we were bringing different people together from different sectors who wanted to work together in future, that instead of having a name on a sheet, you've got a face that you've actually shared a hike with, an experience with, which you've actually challenged yourself. Like you say, you felt like it was quite dangerous. Again, I chose that route specifically because it gives you a sense of danger where it's actually quite safe. You've got that bypass path quite close by to it. But it's something that you've shared together. It's built resilience together. So when you, in the future, you want to sort of like ask a favor or reach out to that person on experience with you, it's like reaching out to a friend rather than reaching out to a name on a sheet.
Well, danger is quite an interesting concept because there's danger in my mind logically around how dangerous it is, and it wasn't dangerous. I'd hasten to ask if you were careful. And then there's danger in the moment when your body reacts to it, because I'm a little bit scared of heights, right? So that's somewhat irrational, but it sort of becomes overwhelming, doesn't it, to a certain extent? So it's kind of an interesting mix, really, in terms of like, I'm sitting here afterwards, a week or so afterwards, and I'm thinking, well, that was fine. In the moment, I was clinging onto the grass, I think, at the time.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't mind using the word danger. I mean, some of the routes that we go on, they are dangerous. That's the point, really. The reaction you get isn't irrational either. When you're high up and you're looking down, it's quite a steep drop, then it's natural to feel afraid of that because there is a real danger if you stray off that path. I mean, what I do is I make sure that the event is safe, but make no mistake, there were a few times where I think on that route in particular, that route is quite a safe route compared to most. But there's probably one or two spots where, like, you stepped a bit too far to the left, or the conditions weren't perfect, and there is quite a big drop there. So well done facing it, and I think that's giving you some sort of emphasis then, to sort of like push on.
Yeah, I mean, at least we didn't have ice, right? So we definitely didn't have any ice on the day. I mean, I think our challenge on the day was heat, wasn't it? So it was, that was pretty hot. I mean, good job we been doing it just like last week. Even last week was even hotter, I think. So that was really, really quite exposed.
Yeah. In fact, I went out last Monday actually in Lakes, and it was actually quite okay. It was actually quite pleasant, about 20 degrees compared to 30 degrees in Leeds. So yeah, sometimes masses can be a bit cooler as well.
And so from your view, I mean, how important is it that we got to think about, I suppose, building that social interaction rather than the transactional interaction? So a lot of the conversation that we were having throughout the day wasn't necessarily work related at all. And we were talking about all sorts of things. Rather than at a conference, you tend to talk about what you do, and it's very work related. But it's having those other kind of conversations, which actually are quite important in terms of getting to know people. It feels like we don't do enough of that these days.
I think it comes back to this whole thing about how we're trying to squeeze more and more stuff into less time. And I think that's not just, like I said before, we're trying to squeeze more into less time. It's not an effort to be more productive for the sake of it. I think that society-wide, there are pressures for us to try and do more with less. And I think us trying to make building relationships transactional is trying to systemize it to some extent, to make it more efficient, so it spends less time on it, to try and squeeze more in, to try and get more results. I found quite early on in the business journey that if you went out to try and build business relationships through networking or anything else by trying to make it a transaction, that you kind of failed pretty quickly. I think there's groups that do that. There are different networking groups in the UK that are designed for transactional relationships. But I think the best business is done when you actually build a solid foundation underneath it. A transactional relationship is actually just a transaction between two people. I think a solid relationship where you build genuine trust is what good business is based on.
It's interesting in terms of one of the themes that's been developing recently, particularly on social media and sort of like as marketing, the other week, is they're all around
Yes.
authenticity and trust. Even in terms of like you're looking around a product, it's less around sort of like what this product will do for you, around like how does this product kind of make you feel, and it's about
Yeah.
being authentic and being who you are, and that's been a theme that's gradually been building. This kind of approach and this kind of sort of event kind of builds into that in terms of like having authentic connections with people and building a group of people that you can trust.
I think that's one of the big concerns going forward. I think it's the next 5 years is around the authenticity online. I put a post this week actually. So I write all my own posts. I don't use ChatGPT or Claude or anything like that. It's all written by myself. But one thing that I noticed that made me think actually the authentic experiences need to be in person. There's a very well-known technique in marketing, storytelling, marketing by telling stories about. And I think that works because as humans, we evolve telling stories. It's how we learn to know, like, and trust each other. When we're on the plains with spears pointing at different tribes, sharing stories is how we built trust with other people. And it's also how we built our collective knowledge as a species by sharing experiences and stories. So storytelling and marketing is very powerful because it tunes into our primal brain. When we see a story, when we see somebody, as me as a supplier of services, I can guide somebody who's a hero in their own journey. That's quite a powerful narrative. So a well-known sort of proponent of this sort of like storytelling method has recently started using a lot of AI in what they do. It's the point where they're actually using the AI to write the stories. And I think that misses the point of what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell stories to connect people. We're not trying to do it to try and win business. So we're at the point now where we've now got computers telling stories to other humans. And you wonder how it's going to be before we have computers telling stories to other computers. And we're kind of bypassing the people in the middle. And I think the only way to try and be to actually be authentic is us in real life experiences where we need to connect together as people. And I think with society being pushed more and more insular, at the same time, we're getting fewer and fewer authentic experiences in the online world. It's quite worrying, I think.
Yeah. I mean, your background before you got into this, and it was interesting when we were chatting about how you got into it, was in sort of like process transformation and consulting and those kind of things. How have you found the change between the two jobs, I suppose, or the two lifestyles to a certain extent? And what are some of the pros that you found, I suppose, moving from one to the other, from the corporate world into still in the corporate world, but actually providing services to the corporate world in a different kind of way?
I guess there are two questions there, aren't there, Chris? One's around how I'm sort of forming myself from the process and business consultant into the outdoor world. The second might be that transition between the corporate world and being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, I guess.
Yeah.
In the first instance, it's one and the same, really. I'm bringing that experience that I had with working with companies, building strategies, working with processes and frameworks, but it's still big thinking. And I think that big thinking works best in an environment that's not your desk. So all I'm doing is bringing the same ideas, the same frameworks for clients, but into the outdoor space. It does create a problem sometimes when you try and do visuals. There's something more aligned than a big whiteboard. That's why we've got like big sheets where we can hunker down, that sort of thing. So in terms of that, even though I'm outdoors all the time, I'm talking about how in real life is more important, human connection is important. I am a techie at heart. I do love my processes, I do love my systems, and I think us as humans need them as well. It's just that we need them to actually organize ourselves. There's almost like two sides to us. There's a bit which needs organization, habit, consistency, and there's a bit that needs freedom from that to actually do the big thinking.
Yeah.
In terms of the transition from sort of like the corporate world into what I'm doing now, it's an interesting one. I was thinking about this morning, actually, how I think from leaving school, we're kind of almost like indoctrinated into that corporate world where we go to work, we get a job, we have colleagues. I saw a post that said that when you're in the office, make sure that your colleagues are never your friends. Never trust them too much. And I thought that was a really horrible way of looking at it, but I kind of get it as well. If you're in a corporate environment where you're working, someone else is working, there's competition there and there's politics and that sort of thing. But you're also indoctrinated into thinking, actually, life is about going to work, doing my job, receiving the money, going to work, doing my job, receiving the money, trying to climb a little bit higher. And because of that, there's a lot of risk associated with starting a business or freelancing or becoming an entrepreneur. And that's a shame, really, because I think first of all, in terms of the connections you make, I do consider a lot of people that I work with friends because that's what we need to, and it goes back to that building trust and relationships. Well, in business, when you're working with somebody else externally, you work out very, very quickly who's trust and who's not trust. I think you do that, and I think you attract your own people and your own tribe to you. So I do consider people friends. I think secondly is the stability around. I love being in the company. I love being part of that culture, and sort of building for the brand. I was made redundant once. It shocked me very, very quickly how that company disposed of you. You put a lot of time and effort into building that company, not just for the money, but also to building the brand. But it's transactional. Yeah, and I accept that. That's the way business works, But it's surprising how quickly you can go from being very, very stable to having nothing behind you at all. And in the entrepreneur world, you kind of are always at that point where, every sale could be the last sale. You're never quite sure where your next one's going to come from. But you have a skill set that you develop as an entrepreneur to deal with that, which you don't have as an employee. As soon as you lose your job, the whole skill set of I need to find another job is very, very alien to most people. Whereas for me, the skill set of I need to find another gig and I need to find another client is what we're used to doing. So I think it gives you a resilience to be able to deal with that uncertainty. Whereas in a job, it's stable, and so it's not, but you can't deal with it.
And in terms of your business now, I mean, obviously having to set it up and sort of going through growth, etc. I mean, you obviously have to do marketing as well as some of the delivery piece. I mean, leave finance to one side, but how have you sort of, what have you found has kind of worked the best from that point of view? I mean, because you're so in some ways talking to your old colleagues to a certain extent to try and get them to go and do something different. And what do you find that kind of works, and what are the points of resistance that you really have to come up against?
So in terms of how I market, I like to do a variety. I found, again, early on, if I invested all my time into one method, one platform, that you're very, very much at the mercy of that. And given what I do as well, I need to be out there. That's why I'm here. I'm here today at co-working day. I'm here because I need to meet people in real life, because the people who want to meet in real life are going to be the people who I want to take out on the hill with me. So I like to make sure. I think it's one of those things where you kind of always learning. I know more now than I did a year ago, and you more a year ago than when I started. I think what I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years is that it's good to have a mix, because when you put an effort in somewhere, it might pay off somewhere else as well. So it's all about taking opportunities to come up and being true to what your message. I think you've got to nail your values very early on. It doesn't mean having to be offensive or choose a hill style and that sort of thing. It just means you need to know what matters to you, what's true to you. So when you actually are talking to somebody, when you're posting something, or when you're designing some marketing materials, that comes through from the bottom up. I think you know that right first and go from there. I think the other thing as well is I find is consistency works really well. I've worked with quite a few people who sort of like put all the focus on one sort of message or one product to the market for a couple of weeks. It doesn't work. They switch to something else for 2 weeks. It doesn't work. I think by the time people take a while to warm up to you, and it comes back to the whole know, like, and trust thing. People don't see one message you put out there and say, right, I'm going to buy something. It takes a while for that momentum to build up. You have to move them from that point of not knowing you at all to the point where they're aware of you. It's the point where they trust you, and it's the point where they're ready to actually do business with you. It's a long game. I think if you keep doing it consistently, showing up, that's how you.
And in terms of picking routes and picking locations and those kind of things, obviously you're based around sort of like Leeds and that sort of like northwest sort of like area, I suppose. I mean, do you have particular favourites you work, or are there particular areas you find that are good for certain types of activities versus others? I mean, what are your favourites?
So I tend to work across the UK, but generally it tends to be that band in the north of England, anywhere from the sort of North York to the east, Yorkshire Dales and Peak District, out to Snowdonia in the west and Lake District. I would say in terms of picking a route, it usually depends on a few factors. One is the clients, what are they capable of? Secondly is what they want to get out of the day as well. So I try and curate a route. So I try to pick a route that's actually going to achieve the objective. So somebody does feel, I need to, I'm a bit low on confidence. I should be doing more and that sort of thing. That's the time to take on something that's going to really push them a little bit. But might not be very good for visioning and that sort of thing. For a visioning day, we might want to take them somewhere with more rolling hills, where it's a nice walk, but we can actually sit down somewhere, overlook a valley with a big piece of paper and say, right, well, if there was no object at all, what will we actually do? Yeah. So I like to choose it on that basis. I'll say my favourite locations are probably the Lake District, simply because it's local, but it's got some epic mountains. I love getting out to Snowdonia when I can. That's got some good rock for more scrambling routes. But yeah, if I can get to Scotland occasionally as well, that's good. But that's quite a long way from me. So.
What are your top 5 mountains or hills to climb, do you think?
Top five mountains.
3 even.
Hills. Top 3. I like Helvellyn because it's accessible. I think you can go up there really easily, or you can have a challenging route. I do like Scafell Pike actually in Lake District as well. Most people do it by the Three Peaks route, which is actually the most boring route. I like to take it from the other side and go for a Great Lang Vale or through Eskdale, which is beautiful.
Mm.
So I like Trevan in Snowdonia. I think that's a really fun mountain. I think that's one where people who want a bit more sort of like hands on rock, still walking, but very much a scramble. I think that's a really fun mountain, that one. And I think more locally to home, Ilkley quite a lot. And that's simply because it's about 35 miles from Leeds. It's proper moorland. So you can actually get people out of the city in half an hour, just over half an hour, and actually be on quite remote destined moors. So it's actually my go-to place locally, I'd say.
And what would be your recommendation, I suppose, around if people elsewhere in the country, I suppose, trying to find these sort of areas and sort of getting out or those kind of things? And what would you say? What's the best kind of approach to think about how to pick a route? How to, I mean, is it around challenge or is it around, I suppose, the results? I mean, how do you best determine that?
I think it is someone going out on their own or someone with me.
In a group. So if they got a team or those
Yeah.
sort of things, or we want to have a team and we want to have a bit of a team event, or a group of people in an industry want to get together.
Yeah, I think it's worth having a chat, I'd say. There are a lot of factors, I'd say. It depends what you're looking for mainly. If you're looking for a challenge, that's where we start looking at routes like maybe something like Yorkshire Three Peaks, or maybe try and engage like you said before. If you want to have a day where you're visioning, that's where we have something a bit more like Ilkley Moor or somewhere in Yorkshire Dales. It's quite nice. If you're looking for inspiration on routes, I do record everything on Strava as well. So feel free to check out things like that as well, because everything's on there. But yeah, I'd recommend if you're not used to going out, have a chat, because everyone in your team will have a different ability as well. There were some people who are like, actually, doing Trevan is like, I do it in my sleep. I run up there and run down there. For other people, something like Striding Gate is the top limit of what they're going to do. And for other people, they won't even consider it. So we need to make sure we choose something that's kind of suitable.
We saw that the other day, didn't we? It's probably the edge of. I mean, I did it, and it's probably at the edge of what I could do. And some other people, mentioning no names, but you know them well, were jumping across the rocks. So which is incredibly impressive, but it was something I couldn't quite do.
Well, that's it, Chris. I think you'd be fine next time you went. I think next time you went, you'd be more used to it. You know what to expect a bit more. I think that's the other thing as well. Is I don't just sort of say people turn up at this place. I think if we've got an event where we're doing something like Striding Edge, I always get information about who's on the team, what they've done before. And I think if someone could benefit from a few extra walks before that, then that's what we recommend. Yeah. We don't sort of just push people out in space. I
mean, certainly like the dinner after and then the couple of days after, I mean, you probably weren't aware of this, right? Which is the emails were going around, social stuff was going around, and it was a really great feeling, right? And we all felt pretty good about ourselves around doing it. And there's a real camaraderie, which is pretty hard to get in most places with, like cakes in the office or those kind of things. That was pretty special. And I think it was a fantastic couple of days, actually. It was really, really good. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's good. Chris, my question about you on that is, what's that giving you now? There's not actually personally, but as a group, what's that giving you?
Well, I think it gives us the connections, right? So it gives us connections. Definitely there's the camaraderie. And I think it doesn't have to necessarily give things, just going back to your marketing point, it isn't, how do I get an immediate feedback sort of like, or immediate benefit straight away? I mean, I don't think it's really about that. It's really around what does that mean in terms of like 6 months time, 12 months time, and can we sort of lean on each other a little bit to maybe help each other with different situations? It could be advice on things. It could be just reaching out for information on things, but you're just sort of building that sort of a collaborative network that's mutually beneficial instead of just transactional to a certain extent. So, I mean, I think there's that warm feeling, but I don't actually think, and I think it'd be kind of wrong to a certain extent if it was sort of, oh, now I'm going to get this. So I think it's over a much longer time period around building a group together. And I think that piece that's important. I mean, when I say I had a fantastic time, I know we'll put your details in. I mean, you're available. I mean, you'll be more than happy to take people out, no doubt as well. I mean, so I'd certainly give you a recommendation. We had a really, really good time. So, I mean, where do you sort of see it sort of going from here the next sort of like 3 years or so? I mean, what are your plans in terms of sort of building from where we are today?
So I'm actually in business with my wife, Claire. She works with female founders and entrepreneurs, particularly in the recruitment sector as well, but she does coaching as well. But she does the experiential stuff as well. So she's actually out at the moment on a day out in the Yorkshire Dales with a client. So she does it as well. And we want to try and get the businesses kind of more working together. She's very much more in the personal alignment, very much, some of the more sort of like the woo mindset side of things, where it's about intuition and that sort of thing, where I'm coming from a process and strategy background. So perfect match really, for this. So we see ourselves running more and more high-level events. So like the big events for teams, retreats as well. That's a big thing where we take people out for several days ultimately it's about making Mountain Boardroom less about us individually and more of an ethos. So it's bringing our beliefs in terms of why people need to connect in the outdoors out to more people and building a business on that and scaling it around those values. So that's where we'd like to take it. Yeah, about sort of like 3-5 year plan. And so bigger days out more often and having a team around us who shares the same values and culture.
Well, it's fantastic. Well, and thanks very much for making the time. Really appreciate it. As I say, we had a great time, and no doubt we'll be probably on a walk together in the future. I'm going to bring poles next time, so that's
Yeah, bring the poles.
Get down the mountain. Yeah. So
Yeah.
thanks very much.
No, it's been a pleasure, Chris. Thank you very much.